It was supposed to be a normal day, or at least that's what I told myself when I woke up this morning. But the moment my fingers brushed against the cold glass of my phone screen, I knew today would leave a scar, a deep one. My heart began pounding like it knew something I didn't want to face yet. Today was the day Ben came back home, the prodigal son returning with his head held high and his pockets full of success. And me? I sat here staring at my phone, waiting for the call or text that never came. Silence. Cold, suffocating silence. I opened Instagram out of habit, or maybe desperation, and there it was, the photo that shattered whatever fragile hope I had left. Ben stood in the center of the frame, wearing an Armani suit so sharp it could cut through steel. His arm was draped casually around Mom's shoulders, while Dad stood beside him, clinking champagne flutes as if they were celebrating some grand achievement. Their smiles radiated pride, joy, love, all the things I thought we shared as a family. But wait, something was missing. Someone was missing. Me. The caption hit me like a freight train. Thank you, family, for everything. I couldn't have done this without all of you. Family? What family? Where was I in this picture-perfect scene? Was I chopped out of the frame, erased from their lives like a bad memory? And then, just when I thought I couldn't feel any worse, Emma's message landed in my inbox like a bomb detonating inside my chest. She didn't even bother to soften the blow. You're not invited, Jack. Ben said you're not important. Attached to her cruel words was a screenshot of a group chat, a conversation among our family members discussing why I wasn't included. They talked about me like I was some kind of burden, a shadow they needed to sweep under the rug. One comment stood out, written by Mom herself. We don't need Jack ruining the mood. He always makes things awkward anyway. Awkward? Ruining the mood? Is that really how they saw me? After everything I'd done for them, for Ben, this was their verdict? My hands trembled as I scrolled through the rest of the messages. Every line felt like another knife twisting into my gut. It wasn't just Ben who had turned his back on me, it was everyone. The people I called family, the ones I sacrificed for, bled for, cried for, they had cast me aside without a second thought. I wanted to scream. To throw my phone across the room and watch it shatter into a million pieces. But instead, I sat frozen, staring at the glowing screen until my vision blurred. My chest felt tight, like someone had wrapped iron chains around my ribs and was slowly tightening them. How had it come to this? How had I gone from being the person Ben leaned on during every crisis to being nothing more than an afterthought? Memories flooded back unbidden, each one cutting deeper than the last. I remembered the time Ben got kicked out of college for cheating on an exam. Who stepped in to pay off the administrators and smooth things over? Me. I sold my car to cover his debts. I lied to Mom and Dad, telling them I needed the money for personal investments, just so Ben wouldn't get disowned. And then there was the time he lost his job because he partied too much instead of showing up to work. Again, I was the one who cleaned up the mess. I gave him half of my savings to keep him afloat while he found himself. But now he didn't even consider me worth inviting to his celebration. Not only that, he actively excluded me, making sure everyone else knew I wasn't important enough to be part of his life anymore. The irony stung like salt in an open wound. All those years of sacrifice, all those times I put their needs before mine, it meant nothing. Absolutely nothing. I clenched my fists so hard my nails dug into my palms. My breaths came in shallow gasps, but I refused to cry. No tears. Not for them. Not for anyone. That's when it hit me, the realization that made my stomach churn and my throat tighten with bitter bile. I wasn't family. Not to them. Not to Ben. Not to anyone. They had used me, taken advantage of my loyalty, and discarded me the moment I stopped being useful. To them, I was nothing more than a walking ATM, a source of endless resources they could drain dry whenever it suited them. And the worst part? I had let them. All these years, I convinced myself that I was doing the right thing. That helping them was proof of my love, my commitment to being a good son, a good brother. But now I saw the truth. I wasn't family. I was a tool. A means to an end. The weight of that realization crushed me. For the first time in my life, I truly understood what it meant to be alone. I closed the app and tossed my phone onto the bed. The room felt suffocating, the walls closing in on me like a vice. Outside, the sun shone brightly, mocking my despair. People walked by, laughing, chatting, living their lives as if nothing mattered. Meanwhile, my world had crumbled into dust. In that moment, I whispered the words aloud, though no one was there to hear them. Family? But there's no Jack. The silence in the room felt heavier than ever. My phone still lay on the bed, its screen dark now, but the words etched into my mind burned brighter than any notification ever could. I couldn't unsee what they had said about me, couldn't unhear the coldness in their voices. My hands were shaking again, not from sadness this time, but from anger. Pure raw anger. I grabbed the phone and dialed Mom's number before I could second-guess myself. It rang twice before she answered, her voice calm and detached as if nothing was wrong. "Mom," I began, my voice trembling despite my best efforts to stay composed. "Why wasn't I invited?" There was a pause, a brief moment where I thought maybe, just maybe, she'd soften. Maybe she'd apologize or explain it away as some kind of misunderstanding. But then came her reply, sharp and dismissive. "Oh, Jack, don't be so dramatic. It was just a small gathering." A small gathering? A small gathering? My jaw clenched so hard I thought my teeth might crack. The Instagram photo flashed in my mind again. Ben in his expensive suit, champagne glasses sparkling under chandelier lights, everyone smiling like they were at some grand gala. Small gathering? The entire town must have been there for all I knew. Everyone except me. "And besides," she continued, her tone dripping with condescension, "you know how busy you are with work. We didn't want to bother you." Bother me? Bother me? That was rich. They hadn't bothered to include me because they didn't think I mattered. Because Ben had made sure of it. "I see," I said through gritted teeth, trying to keep my voice steady. "So you didn't invite me because you didn't want to bother me? Not because Ben told you I wasn't important enough?" Another pause. This one longer, more uncomfortable. When she finally spoke, her voice was icy. "Don't twist things around, Jack. You're always making everything so complicated. Just let it go." Let it go? Let it go. How could I possibly let something like this go when it felt like they were ripping out my heart and stomping on it? Before I could respond, the call ended abruptly. She hung up on me. My own mother. I stared at the phone in disbelief, my fingers tightening around it until my knuckles turned white. Was this really happening? Was this who they were now? Or had they always been this way and I'd simply been too blind to notice? And then, as if to drive the knife even deeper, a text notification popped up. It was from Dad. "You helped Ben succeed. Be happy for him." Attached to the message was an image, a screenshot of a bank transfer. From my account to Ben's. Dated last month. The amount was staggering. Enough to buy a house. Enough to change someone's life. My vision blurred as I stared at the numbers. I scrolled back further, pulling up months' worth of transactions. Each one told the same story. Money flowing out of my account and into Ben's. Thousands upon thousands of dollars. Money I had earned through years of grinding, sacrificing, and barely sleeping. It hit me like a ton of bricks. All those times I thought I was helping them, supporting them, it wasn't gratitude they felt. It was entitlement. To them I wasn't family. I was a walking ATM. A bottomless pit of resources they could exploit whenever it suited them. As I sat there, staring at the damning evidence on my screen, memories began flooding back. Memories I had tried so hard to bury because they hurt too much to confront. I remembered selling my car, the first big purchase I'd ever made, the one I'd saved up for years to buy. I sold it to pay off Ben's gambling debts. He swore he'd stop, that he'd learned his lesson. And I believed him. Why wouldn't I? He was my brother. Then there was the time I took out a second mortgage on my apartment to cover his failed business venture. He promised it would turn around, that he'd pay me back every cent. But he never did. And the worst part? Every single time I convinced myself it was worth it. That I was doing the right thing. That this was what family was supposed to do. But now, sitting alone in the darkened room, I realized the truth. I wasn't family. I was a fool. A sucker who let them walk all over me while pretending it was love. I threw the phone onto the bed, letting it bounce once before coming to rest. My chest felt tight, like the air had been sucked out of the room. I stood up, pacing back and forth, trying to process everything. Trying to figure out how I had ended up here. How could they treat me like this? After everything I'd done for them, for him, they acted like I was nothing. Like I didn't exist unless they needed something from me. And then it hit me, the realization that made my blood boil and my fists clench. This wasn't just about today. This wasn't just about a party I wasn't invited to. This was about years of manipulation, years of being taken advantage of. Years of giving and getting nothing in return. No more. I stopped pacing and looked at myself in the mirror. My face was pale, my eyes red-rimmed from holding back tears I refused to shed. But beneath the exhaustion there was something else. Something I hadn't seen in a long time. Determination. They wanted to play games? Fine. But this time I wasn't going to be the pawn. This time I was going to take control. I walked over to my desk and opened the drawer, pulling out a notebook. Flipping it open, I began jotting down ideas, plans, ways to make them pay, not physically but emotionally. Ways to expose the truth about who they really were. About who Ben really was. Because deep down I knew this wasn't just about me. It was about justice. About making sure no one else had to suffer the way I had. As I wrote, my resolve hardened. There was no turning back now. Whatever happened next, I was ready. When I finished writing, I closed the notebook and leaned back in my chair, exhaling slowly. The weight on my chest hadn't lifted completely, but for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt free. Free from the chains of obligation. Free from the lies I'd told myself to justify their behavior. And as I sat there in the darkness, I whispered the words that sealed my decision. No more tolerance. The next morning, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. My mind was sharp, my resolve unshakable. Last night's notebook was still open on the desk, filled with scribbled plans and ideas. But before I could execute any of them, I needed ammunition, real, undeniable proof that would expose Ben for who he truly was. I didn't waste time. After a quick shower and a strong cup of coffee, I made a call to an old acquaintance, a private investigator named Marcus. He wasn't cheap, but he was thorough. And more importantly, he was discreet. "Marcus," I said as soon as he picked up, "I need you to dig deep into someone's life. Leave no stone unturned." "Who's the target?" he asked, his voice low and professional. "My brother," I replied, spitting out the word brother, like it left a bitter taste in my mouth. There was a pause on the other end. "Family stuff, huh? Those are always messy." "You have no idea," I muttered darkly. By the end of the week, Marcus had delivered. What he uncovered made my blood run cold. Each piece of information was worse than the last, painting a picture of a man I barely recognized, a liar, a cheat, and a manipulator. The first file Marcus sent me contained bank statements, loan agreements, and even recorded phone calls. It turned out Ben wasn't just living off my money, he was drowning in debt owed to some dangerous people. According to the documents, Ben had borrowed a staggering $200,000 from a notorious loan shark in London. The terms were brutal, exorbitant interest rates and threats of violence if payments weren't made on time. In one of the recordings, Ben's panicked voice pleaded for an extension, promising he'd pay double next month. But what chilled me most was the timestamp on the recording. It was dated just 2 weeks ago. That meant Ben was still neck-deep in trouble, and his so-called success back home was nothing more than a facade. As I listened to the audio clip over and over again, a part of me wanted to laugh. All those fancy suits, the champagne, the Instagram posts, they were all funded by lies and borrowed cash. Next came evidence of Ben's professional misconduct. Marcus had obtained emails between Ben and a former colleague named Claire. From the thread, it became clear that Ben had stolen Claire's business idea, a revolutionary software platform designed to streamline supply chain management, and passed it off as his own. Claire had filed a lawsuit against him, but the case was mysteriously dropped after she received a settlement offer. Digging deeper, Marcus discovered that the settlement funds came from none other than me. Another transfer from my account had gone directly to Claire's lawyer, labeled vaguely as consulting fees. Ben had used my money not only to cover his tracks but also to silence anyone who dared challenge him. The audacity of it made my fists clench. How many times had I unknowingly bailed him out without realizing the full extent of his deceit? Then there was the personal side of things, or rather, the lack thereof. Marcus provided screenshots of flirtatious text messages between Ben and his female boss, Linda. Their conversations were nauseatingly obvious. "You're the only reason I stay late at work," Ben wrote in one message. "Keep performing like this and that promotion is yours," Linda replied coyly. It wasn't just about sex or power, it was about manipulation. Ben had climbed the corporate ladder by using charm and cunning, stepping on anyone who got in his way. And judging by the timestamps, their affair had been ongoing for months, right under Lily's nose. Speaking of Lily, Marcus had managed to track down her recent social media activity. She seemed oblivious to Ben's betrayal, posting sweet captions about their perfect relationship, alongside photos of engagement rings and wedding venues. The irony was almost poetic. Ben had built this perfect image of himself, a successful, devoted fiancé, but beneath the surface he was rotten to the core. But the piece de resistance, the secret that would destroy Ben completely, was his academic fraud. During his master's program at Oxford, Ben had hired a ghostwriter to complete his thesis. Not only that, he had bribed a professor to overlook glaring errors in his research methodology. If these allegations ever saw the light of day, his degree would be revoked, and his reputation would crumble overnight. Marcus included a scanned copy of the original thesis proposal, along with emails detailing the bribe. There was even a blurry photo of Ben handing over an envelope stuffed with cash to the professor outside a dimly lit pub. As I stared at the damning evidence, a slow, icy smile spread across my face. For a moment, my mind drifted back to the first time I helped Ben. It was during our teenage years when he got caught shoplifting. He begged me not to tell Mom and Dad, promising he'd never do it again. Back then I believed him. I lied to cover for him, took the blame when the store owner called home. Looking back now, I realized that moment had set the tone for everything that followed. Every lie, every theft, every act of betrayal, it all stemmed from that single incident. And here we were, decades later, with Ben still playing the same game. Only this time the stakes were higher. Sitting alone in my dimly lit apartment, surrounded by files and documents, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: control. For so long, I had let others dictate my life, let them walk all over me while I stood silently in the shadows. But not anymore. I opened my laptop and began organizing the evidence. Photos, recordings, transcripts. I cataloged each item meticulously, ensuring nothing could slip through the cracks. By the time I finished, I had enough material to ruin Ben's life 10 times over. And yet I felt no guilt, no remorse. This wasn't revenge, it was justice. Justice for every sacrifice I had made, every lie I had swallowed, every ounce of dignity I had lost. When I finally closed the laptop, I leaned back in my chair and allowed myself a small, satisfied smile. "You played the wrong person, Ben," I whispered to the empty room. The grand ballroom was alive with laughter, clinking glasses, and the soft hum of a live jazz band. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting shimmering light across the room. Ben stood at the center of it all, microphone in hand, basking in the glow of admiration. His perfectly tailored suit gleamed under the spotlight, and his confident smile radiated triumph. "Thank you all for being here tonight," he began, his voice smooth and practiced. "This achievement wouldn't have been possible without the unwavering support of my family." As he spoke, I slipped into the room unnoticed, or so I thought. My entrance caused barely a ripple at first, but as soon as people realized who I was, whispers rippled through the crowd like wildfire. "Jack, what's he doing here?" I walked slowly toward the stage, my steps deliberate and measured. Dressed in a sleek black suit that matched the elegance of the occasion, I looked every bit the part of someone who belonged there, yet utterly out of place at the same time. The contrast between me and Ben couldn't have been starker. While he exuded arrogance, I carried an air of quiet menace. When I reached the foot of the stage, I stopped and raised my hand slightly, signaling for silence. Ben faltered mid-sentence, his eyes widening in shock. "Jack?" he stammered, lowering the microphone. Ignoring him, I climbed the stairs to the stage and took the mic from his trembling hands. The room fell deathly silent. Every single pair of eyes was on me now, waiting to see what I would do next. "Ben," I said, my voice steady and cutting through the tension like a blade, "do you want to talk about the money I've spent funding your lavish lifestyle?" Gasps erupted throughout the audience. Some guests exchanged horrified glances. Others leaned forward eagerly, hungry for drama. Ben's face turned pale. He opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. Instead, he just stared at me, dumbfounded. "Oh, don't play dumb," I continued, my lips curling into a cold smile. "Do you want me to tell them everything?" Before he could answer, I turned to the projector screen set up behind the stage. With a click of the remote in my pocket, the first slide appeared, a detailed breakdown of financial transactions between Ben and me over the years. Each entry was labeled clearly, showing exactly where the money had gone. Luxury cars, designer clothes, extravagant vacations. Then came the photos, Ben handing cash to the professor outside the dimly lit pub, screenshots of flirtatious texts with Linda, and finally the recording of his desperate plea to the loan shark. Pandemonium broke loose. Murmurs escalated into shouts, chairs scraped against the floor as people stood up in disbelief. "No, this isn't real," Ben cried, his composure crumbling. "Oh, it's very real," I replied, relishing the panic in his voice. That's when the chaos reached its peak. Mom screamed, clutching her chest before collapsing onto the floor. Dad rushed to her side, his own face ashen as he struggled to breathe. Lily, who had been sitting near the front, shot to her feet, her expression a mix of fury and betrayal. Without hesitation, she hurled her engagement ring straight at Ben's head. "You lying bastard," she shrieked. "How dare you cheat on me? And with your boss? You're disgusting." Ben stumbled backward, sweat pouring down his face. He tried to flee, pushing past stunned guests, but two burly men blocked his path. They wore dark suits and sunglasses, their presence commanding authority. "It's time to settle your debt, kid," one of them growled, grabbing Ben by the arm. Desperation clawed at Ben's features. "No. Please not now. I'll pay you back, I swear." I stepped closer, my gaze locking onto his. "You're not going anywhere," I said, my tone icy. "Not until everyone knows exactly who you are." Just moments earlier, the atmosphere had been festive and carefree. Servers circulated among the guests, offering trays of champagne flutes and hors d'oeuvres. Laughter echoed off the walls, mingling with the soothing melodies of the jazz quartet. Ben basked in the spotlight, shaking hands and exchanging pleasantries with influential figures from the community. His charm was magnetic, drawing people in like moths to a flame. To anyone watching, he seemed untouchable, a shining example of success and ambition. But beneath the polished exterior lay cracks ready to shatter. And I was the one holding the hammer. As I stood there watching the chaos unfold, a strange sense of satisfaction washed over me. This wasn't just about revenge, it was about exposing the truth. For too long, Ben had hidden behind lies, using manipulation and deceit to climb higher while dragging others down. Now, stripped bare in front of everyone he cared about, he was nothing more than a fraud. A coward. My thoughts briefly drifted to Mom and Dad. Their reactions were painful to witness, but they deserved to know the truth. All these years they'd blindly supported Ben, turning a blind eye to his misdeeds because it was easier than confronting reality. And Lily, poor Lily. She didn't deserve to be treated like a pawn in Ben's game. Still, as much as I pitied them, I felt no remorse for what I'd done. Sometimes pain is necessary to wake people up. With Ben cornered and the evidence laid bare, I delivered my final blow. "This man," I gestured toward Ben, whose knees buckled under the weight of shame, "isn't the person you think he is. He's a liar, a thief, and a cheat. Everything he has achieved has come at someone else's expense." Turning to the mob enforcers, I added, "Take him away. Let him deal with the consequences of his actions." As they dragged Ben out, kicking and screaming, I scanned the room one last time. Faces filled with horror, anger, and disbelief stared back at me. Good. Let them remember this night forever. Walking out of the ballroom, I paused at the threshold and glanced over my shoulder. "You should thank me," I muttered under my breath. "I just saved all of you from a lifetime of lies." The chaos of the party still lingered in the air as I stepped out of the ballroom, leaving behind a scene of utter devastation. Ben's desperate screams echoed faintly from inside, mingling with the worried murmurs of guests trying to revive Mom and Dad. But I didn't look back. Not yet. I walked through the grand hallway, my footsteps echoing against marble floors that once symbolized wealth and unity but now felt cold and hollow. My mind raced, replaying everything that had just happened. The lies exposed, the betrayals unveiled, it was all finally out in the open. And yet, there was no sense of victory, only an overwhelming exhaustion. As I reached the entrance, two figures appeared before me, Mom and Dad. Their faces were pale, their expressions filled with desperation. "Jack," Mom pleaded, falling to her knees in front of me, tears streaming down her face. "Please, you can't leave him like this. He needs you." Her voice cracked on the last word, raw with emotion. For a moment I froze, staring at her crumpled form. This was the woman who had raised me, nurtured me, or so I thought. But now, seeing her beg for Ben's sake, I realized how deeply she had failed me. Dad staggered forward, clutching his chest as if his heart might give out at any moment. His voice boomed, though it lacked its usual authority. "We're family, Jack. You have to help him." Family. That word again. The same word they had used to justify taking advantage of me for years. To them, being family meant sacrifice, but only from me, never from them. I looked at them both, really looked at them, and for the first time I saw them clearly. They weren't the loving parents I'd imagined, they were enablers. Enablers of Ben's selfishness, greed, and deceit. When did family mean I had to pay for his mistakes? I asked, my voice calm but laced with bitterness. Neither of them answered. They couldn't. Because deep down they knew I was right. Without another word, I pulled out my wallet and retrieved my credit card, the one I had used countless times to bail Ben out of trouble. Holding it up between two fingers, I snapped it cleanly in half, letting the pieces fall to the floor. Not anymore. Ben's voice suddenly cut through the tension as he stumbled toward us, flanked by the loan sharks who had dragged him outside earlier. His suit was disheveled, his hair matted with sweat, and his eyes wide with panic. "You can't do this," he shouted, pointing a trembling finger at me. "I need you. Without you I'm finished." Finished? The irony wasn't lost on me. All these years I had been the safety net beneath him, catching him every time he fell. Now, without that net, he was crashing hard, and it was exactly what he deserved. I met his gaze, my expression unreadable. "You should have thought about that before you decided I wasn't worth inviting to your precious party." Turning away, I took a step toward the exit. "No!" Ben screamed, lunging forward, but one of the men grabbed him by the arm, holding him back. For a brief second, I paused at the doorway, glancing over my shoulder. Rain poured outside, drenching the driveway and reflecting the dim glow of the mansion's lights. "The only time I'll ever need you," I said, my voice low but carrying unmistakable finality, "is when you're completely out of my life." With that, I stepped into the rain, letting the icy droplets soak through my suit. It felt cleansing, as if the storm was washing away years of resentment, guilt, and obligation. As I stood under the pouring rain, memories of my childhood flashed before my eyes. I remembered the days when Ben and I would play together in the backyard, building forts and dreaming of adventures. Back then we were inseparable. Brothers in every sense of the word. But somewhere along the way things changed. Ben grew selfish, always expecting me to pick up the pieces when life got tough. And I, blinded by loyalty and love, never questioned it. Now, standing alone in the rain, I realized how far we had drifted apart. Those innocent days of brotherhood were long gone, replaced by betrayal and resentment. The next morning, I sat in my lawyer's office, signing documents to transfer my entire inheritance to charity. Every stroke of the pen felt liberating, like shedding layers of chains I hadn't even realized I was carrying. Afterward, I booked a one-way ticket around the world. No destination, no timeline, just freedom. As I boarded the plane, I glanced out the window at the fading skyline of the city where I had grown up. It felt surreal, like closing a chapter of my life forever. Meanwhile, Ben's life spiraled out of control. Word of his academic fraud spread quickly, leading to the revocation of his master's degree. His employer fired him after discovering his affair with Linda, and Lily filed a restraining order against him. The loan sharks, tired of waiting for repayment, began making threats. Within weeks, Ben fled town, leaving behind a trail of debt and broken relationships. He became a ghost, living in hiding and struggling to survive. The glamorous facade he had built collapsed entirely, exposing the empty shell of a man beneath. And me? I moved on. For the first time in my life, I felt truly free. Free from the burdens of the past, free from the expectations of others, and free to forge my own path. Standing on a cliff overlooking the ocean during my travels, I smiled for the first time in years. The waves crashed against the rocks below, mirroring the turmoil I had left behind. "Goodbye, Ben," I whispered to the wind. "I hope you learned something from all this."